Reporting on intimate partner violence. When we consider the experiences of women and gender and sexually diverse people who are Indigenous or who have lived experience with physical or cognitive disabilities, we see much higher rates of intimate partner violence, as well as higher likelihoods of having more than one partner in their lifetime who is abusive. More than half of women with a disability have experienced intimate partner violence, while nearly 3/4 of Indigenous women with disabilities and more than 2/3 of gender and sexually diverse people with disabilities have experienced some form of intimate partner violence.
Because I'm disabled, I look at everything from the perspective of being disabled, so whether it's getting somewhere for dinner, something as easy as going to a restaurant. Can I get in there? Is there a step up? Are the tables too high? Is it this, that, the other? I should be able to go everywhere, but I can't because transportation is hard when you're in a big 300-pound motorized wheelchair. And if transportation is hard, imagine how much harder it is when you do all that work to get there, and then there's 3 big stone steps to get in. So when I'm writing a story, first of all, I can't take a story if it's a new business story and I can't get in. That's one that I think of immediately. But then, if I'm writing a story about gender based violence, I can't help but put myself in the position of the person who has been attacked because not only am I a woman, but I'm a disabled girl. So I have a bone disorder, which makes me weaker than other people. So maybe she is bruised, and I'm saying that's awful, but I would die. And that is the case for a lot of disabled people. So many of our issues get sort of swept under the rug. Is just like, well, you're lucky you have someone taking care of you anyway. Well, you're lucky. What? So I always, like, I can't help but put myself in those situations when I read about them. And I will be honest with you, it does make me largely more fearful. Here I am, 28 years old, and I'm never going to be married. And I'm never going to do any of that because I can't help but read those headlines and put myself in that position and know that I would die.
While Statistics Canada data tells us that 44% of Arab, 42% of Black, and 47% of Latinx women experience higher rates of intimate partner violence than does the total of visible minority women at 29%, two of our interviewees suggest that these numbers are likely even higher because many racially marginalized women have concerns about reporting the violence perpetrated against them by the racially marginalized men with whom they partner.
When I think about how local media, reports on gender-based violence, I think invisibility, really. For Black women, there's this added edge around this space of, I report this. My person, my love, becomes yet another man that's going to fall into this system. In our community, you see, the police have already created such a chasm, right? From this military industrial complex that we live in, the police is definitely not a Black person's friend at all. And we have sons. We have, our loves, our partners. And we know that just by walking down the street, they're already perceived as that threat. And they might be the threat. That's what causes this discombobulation, this dissidence in the way that we have to show up. Because even though we know that they really may be a threat, we have to juxtapose it against the sense of knowing that, one, we're removing them from our households, we're placing them in a system that's not going to help them. They're not seen as victims, creating the stigma that already exists around for our Black men. And so for us, when we have to make these decisions, we may hold out a lot longer. It's layered. It starts from the invisibility until it's not invisible at all, until it's so big and largesque that then, you see, Black people can only be this certain way. It's got to perpetuate a way of being. And I think the media very much has an agenda, right, of keeping a certain imagery alive of the Black man and of the Black woman. And so that's why we see the silence. We're not blonde-haired and blue-eyed, right?
And when I think of irresponsible journalism in whatever media form, it's where people are not delving into background or context, and they're simply presenting facts without nuance. And knowing that people who don't have a background in thinking about certain issues are going to look at it and go for obvious and perhaps dangerous questions. So if we're thinking about gender-based violence, the questions around that come up for all people, I think, who are in such relationships is, well, why don't they leave? The question of why people don't leave is further exacerbated for marginalized populations. For example, if for newcomer women who are dependent on a spouse's visa, for them to leave means, will they be deported? But unless you include that political angle of, what is Canada doing to prevent that happening, then you leave readers with the idea of especially if we're looking at women from certain places where the stereotype is helpless woman, doesn't have a mind of her own, no empowerment, you reinforce that stereotype. And so I think that for me becomes a very dangerous space where there is this coverage that can be that's irresponsible. If you have no coverage, then people aren't necessarily thinking about it at all, which is certainly not a good thing. But irresponsible journalism can cause more issues along the line.
These statistics are further complicated by low reporting from racially marginalized women who partner with white men, because white men, thanks to patriarchy, misogyny, and racism, are more likely to be believed than Black, Indigenous, and racially marginalized women. We know that gender and sexually diverse women are at greater risk of intimate partner violence than their cisgender heterosexual counterparts, with 86% of gender and sexually diverse women experiencing intimate partner violence at some point in their lifetime. More specifically, 56% of trans women had a partner that insulted, swore, shouted, or yelled at them. 33% of trans women were forced or pressured to engage in sexual activity when they did not want to. 29% of trans women had a partner push, shove, shake, or pin them down. And 24% of trans women were threatened with harm by a partner. Consistently, regardless of other intersections of identity, young women, 18 to 24, are 5 times more likely to report that their partner sexually assaulted them, and 3 times more likely to be physically assaulted by their intimate partner. A common theme throughout the literature, including what's written by current and former journalists, is that regardless of the target of gender-based or intimate partner violence, the media often reports incidents as though they are individual or one-off events, rather than connected to patriarchy, colonialism, racism, misogyny, class, ableism, and other systems of oppression. Systemic and structural issues are ignored, and responsibility is placed on the behavior of individuals, sometimes the perpetrators, but often the victims or survivors.
There has been a series of stories, actually, that has hit the Black community of, first of all, a Black woman who may or may not have had like an OnlyFans page, but there's been a circumstance where they have gone out on a date and ended up with a white man, and they ended up dead. And every instance that I have seen, I've seen 3 different cases of this now. In every instance, there's been sure to mention that there was drug use, that they, meaning the woman, brought the drugs to the whole whatever the event was going to be, and the white guy was just, I don't know. Something happened. First of all, if they are or did have an fans only page, again, this idea of who gets to be the victim. So not only is this Black woman, a Black woman, she's also a sex worker. So therefore, that makes her, 2 different layers of undesirable. And then this idea that even if she has those things, she can't be just on a date. She can't just go out. And what would a white man want to go out with this Black woman for?
When we talk about the importance of the media's role in shaping public policy and opinion, it is important to note that dealing with the aftermath of intimate partner violence was estimated in 2009 to cost more than $7.4 billion annually. Adjusted for inflation, that number is $9.8 billion at the time of developing this training program. Furthermore, more than half of women who have experienced intimate partner violence said at least one abusive act happened at or close to their workplace. Of women who experienced intimate partner violence, nearly 40% said it made it challenging to get to work, and 8.5% indicated they had lost employment because of it, meaning intimate partner violence threatens women's ability to maintain economic independence and threatens to drive them into poverty or further into poverty because of that loss. When media does not address the wider systemic and structural issues related to intimate partner violence, these economic losses are also framed as the victim or survivor's fault, and there is no larger policy discussion about the costs, healthcare and the justice system, for instance, of dealing with intimate partner violence after women have been harmed.
Tell more than just the story. Tell more than just, the act of violence, right? What set that up? What could have led to that moment? Who were the people who were involved? What are the dimensions to who they are? I want to know what's happening behind those scenes. What created more than just the action I'm hearing about? And I think that's what's missing, or could be done a little bit more of, is the idea of giving a whole fuller picture, giving more of the sides of why something has happened versus it just being that black and white reporting that we sometimes see, or always see majority of the time. It would help so much.
Some of the recommendations in the Guide for Journalists center around providing resources, giving context to individual instances of violence, and ensuring the use of correct terminology.
Some people don't want to be called victims. And you know what? That's fine. Some people prefer the term survivors. Some people prefer, this, that, or the other term. And I prefer to use that. And some people are also very comfortable getting into gory detail on what happened to them. And some people just want to give you the vaguest idea. These are the sort of areas where you have to be very careful and very sensitive with how you speak to them and what you say. And more importantly, what you write, because you don't want to betray that person who's been in such a vulnerable situation. You don't want to betray their trust when they came to you to talk to you for your story, essentially. You don't want to betray that. Talking to them about what they want to be called, what words they want to use, that is something that's very important to me as a journalist.
Key takeaways. Ensure that individual stories are framed within the wider context of how and why intimate partner violence continues to be an epidemic in Canada and around the world. Don't be afraid to show your humanity in your reporting. These are inherently emotional issues. We'll discuss this more in the media objectivity module. Dealing with the aftermath of intimate partner violence costs nearly $10 billion annually in Canada. It is estimated that every dollar invested in violence prevention and crime prevention saves $5 to $7 in law enforcement and justice system costs. Therefore, an investment of approximately $1.67 billion nationally could result in savings of approximately $8.3 billion annually. Investing in housing, rent controls, food security, mental health supports, disability supports, healthcare, and harm reduction is investing in violence prevention and crime prevention.